Okay, back on the Philharmonic stereo. I was communicating with a YouTube member, 45player, who's also a member of one of the Facebook antique radio pages, and we were discussing this Siemens selenium rectifier. And he did tell me that those are bad about going weak. And he also told me that my B+ voltage on the first filter capacitor should be in the neighborhood of around 140 volts or so. And we only have about 120 there. So I think just for good measure, we're going to go ahead and replace this with a 1N4007 silicon diode. And we'll place an appropriate resistor ahead of the diode to drop the excess voltage, because a selenium rectifier has more voltage drop across it than a silicon diode. So if you use a silicon diode without the resistor, your B+ may actually be too high. And generally the resistor value will depend on the circuit, but generally anywhere between say 10 ohms up to say 32 ohms, somewhere in that vicinity. You just have to do some experimentation to find the one that works best. So let's take care of that now. Okay, here's what we did. We wired a 47 ohm resistor and a 15 ohm resistor in series because I can't really get to the parts house today, so we're making use with what we have. Now if I was able to get to the parts house, I'd just buy a 68 ohm 5 watt resistor, because that's what gets our B+ voltage close to what it should be. And another thing, the original filter capacitors were rated at 150 working volts, which sort of pushes it, because even when this thing is warmed up and under load, we're kicking out around 140 volts B+, and our initial turn-on surge voltage is around 170. So I used 200 and 250 volt filter capacitors. That way we have plenty of room there for safety. And I'll demonstrate. When I turn this on, you'll see the surge voltage, the B+ voltage, jump up to around 170 until the filaments warm up. And then you can see it drop back down as the tubes warm up and place a load on the power supply.
Work with hunters in the community, asking them to donate venison. We work in conjunction with the local deer processors. They're a huge help, and of course an integral part of what we do.
And there we are, 143 volts. That's close enough to the target voltage that we're looking for.
Processing fees. And
okay, we're back together. Well, not actually back together, but we have that rectifier replaced, and I touched up the IF and RF alignment a little. And notice we don't have an outdoor antenna connected anymore.
They were on there preaching that they were successful. Jonah didn't think he was. Do you think you?
I can see the breaking. God is.
It don't matter.
I'm easy like Sunday morning.
these three guys help us out, and they help us out tremendously.
1942, Eleanor flipped her wig about Geico saving her moolah on her motor.
And you know what? People that talk about how bad AM sounds are generally basing their opinions, most likely, on listening to a modern AM receiver that really has just enough circuitry in it to pass a signal. If they were to hear a properly maintained AM station on a vintage tube radio that was made back when AM radio was king of the hill, they might feel differently about it.
This time, they're making it even better. Come in and catch 2%.
Hunters by your group.
Unfortunately, a lot of the stations around my area are not very well maintained.
What happens to him?
Turning around.
Okay, I've just replaced this 680 ohm resistor in the power supply. I would have preferred a nice new flame-proof resistor, but since all we had was an old resistor that had been cut out of something, and it actually read right on the money, I went ahead and stuck it in there. This original 680 ohm resistor, as you can see, is reading 800 ohms. So that is definitely out of tolerance, and will cause your power supply voltages to be lower. And one thing about these old radios, a lot of times they'll often work, but if you do a bunch of little things to them, they work even better. All of these little bitty problems add up to make bigger problems, so you want to correct them all. Now here's our cathode bias resistor for the output tube. It's supposed to be 33 ohms, orange, black. However, 49.5 ohms, so let's call it 50 ohms. Well, guess what? I don't have a 33 ohm resistor of this wattage in stock, and like I said before, going to the parts house is out of the question today. So let me show you what we're going to do. I wouldn't recommend doing this for something you're going to fix for somebody else or for a long-term repair, but it'll get you by in a tight. Okay, I now have a 100 ohm resistor wired in parallel with this 33 ohm resistor that's actually reading 50 ohms. Let's see what the meter says now. How about that? 33 ohms. Now, whenever I took electronics, they taught us all about parallel resistors. And if you have two equal value resistors, say two 20 ohm resistors in parallel, you have 10 ohms and your wattage doubles. So if you're using 1/2 watt resistors, you'll end up with a 10 ohm 1 watt resistor. But when resistors are of different values, there's a formula for that. And honestly, I haven't used the formula since I took electronics in college, so I'd have to go look that up. So I just made an educated guess of what a good resistor value would be, and the first guess I made was correct. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend doing this to something you would want to last for long-term periods of time, or for something you're fixing for somebody. But for a temporary repair or on something you don't want to spend any money on, as in the case of this thing, this is more of just something to have fun with, and, you know, it'll get you by. Okay, there we go. I think that'll about do it. The only other problem is this output tube is weaker than this one, because it takes longer to warm up than the other one, and I've confirmed that by switching the tubes around. It's not something we have to immediately replace. And here are all the capacitors that are all leaky that came out of this unit. And this one is the across the line AC capacitor that the end blew out of, no surprise there. And I replaced it with a modern AC line safety capacitor.
Mall. Help make it a Merry Christmas for everyone. The Elf Louise Radiothon on News Radio 1200 WOAI.
Here we are back together, working good as far as the radio goes. Sorry about the poor lighting. It's after dark and the lighting here in the shop is not the best, or at least not in this part of the shop.
Burdens alone.
We're under the brick and steel of a
WMOX. This is the Dave Ramsey Show. Thank you for joining us, America. It's a free call. Some say
they're balanced.
What you pay for it. The phone number is 888-825-5225. That's 888-825-5225. Or you can go online at Dave.
And for more perspective on
in the Jefferson area on US 129 southbound at Highway 332. We have an overturned tractor trailer working there. Floyd Hillman, News Talk, WSB.
I'm WSB meteorologist Kirk Mallers with Atlanta's most accurate, dependable forecast. Scattered showers.
Still not the most sensitive radio I've ever had my hands on, but
60% overnight.
A lot better than it was. Okay, let's try the phonograph now.
With fog and showers, 70% likely out.
Set it to stereo phono. And we're still very distorted on the phono, so that means our cartridge is likely shot. Okay, let's see if the automatic function even works. Kind of got my doubts. Nope. So it's going to need some cleaning and lubrication. Okay, here's our radio.
Credit cards.
Here's our phono for comparison.
Put cash in an spend the cash, make a list, check it twice, stay on the cash basis, and you will not overspend. How fun is that? Oh, it's... Pointer is this.
And you can't see it very well, but this is one of those cheap crystal cartridges. It has the little fork style needle. The whole cartridge flips over for LP to 78. So I'm sure that's what the trouble is. Well, what happened here? Now the arm won't go down. Always something with these things. Okay, so this is what happened. The little thing that holds the counterbalance spring decided to pop loose. But okay, we're about out of time for this video anyway. We have the radio working successfully. And in the next video, we'll tackle the record changer. Okay, there you go. Thanks for watching, and more to come later.